Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Connecting the Dots, How to Use Your Marketing and Enrollment Data to Make Better Decisions. This webinar is brought to you by MindMAx and partnered with UPSIA. My name is Dawn Freed, and I will be moderating today's session. For those of you unfamiliar with MindMAx, we partner with schools to increase enrollments through unbundled technology-enabled marketing and enrollment services. Some of our services include consulting, media buying, CRM and marketing automation technology, live chat, and inbound-outbound calling. Founded in 2009, we are dedicated to higher education and work with a variety of universities throughout the various stages of the enrollment funnel and student journey. We specialize in nurturing the adult learner across graduate degrees, graduate certificates, non-credit certificates, and bachelor's degree completion, either in the online space or for the face-to-face learner. This is our agenda for today. We'll begin by talking about how to get the right data in the right place, followed by a live demo of our enrollment intelligence platform. Then we'll review key takeaways and talk about potential next steps. Throughout the webinar, you can submit questions in the GoToWebinar console panel. We will address those questions during the Q&A session. We'll also launch 2 polls during the presentation and would love for your participation. Now, I would like to introduce our presenters. You'll be hearing from Lee Maxey, CEO and founder of MindMAx. Lee found MindMAx in 2009 and since then has built long-lasting relationships with our university partners and has built a culture focused on aligning with client-specific needs. Kirsten Warendorf is a senior business analyst here at MindMAx. She leads our enrollment intelligence reporting and has over 15 years of experience performing market research and data analysis. Now I'd like to turn it over to our presenters.
Well, welcome. And getting the right data in the right place, or connecting the dots, is what we're going to focus on today. As everyone knows, there's more and more data available to all of us at all times. And what we're going to do today is I'll frame things up a little bit, and then Kirsten, who's our business analyst and handles and deals with and sifts through and makes sense out of all this data, and I are going to talk through how to look at a couple different situations and how to develop insights from them. Next slide. So these are some things that we've learned over time. Many of the schools that we work with struggle to connect their data or to make sense out of the data for different reasons. And I'll talk about each one of these situations individually. But bottom line is, if the data sources aren't connected and you're not able to get insight into each of the data sources and connect them together, it's hard to get a full picture of what's actually happening in the prospective student journey. So let's take a look at the first one, which is data is often limited or inaccessible. So one of the things that happens is websites aren't current, links perhaps are broken, but more importantly, that leads aren't captured properly. And what I mean by that is leads are often not captured going into the marketing automation system and then into the CRM, and therefore it's hard to tag those leads back to potentially lead sources or advertising campaign sources. Google Analytics separated from the enrollment data. This is actually quite common. Very rarely do we run into a school that actually has a full funnel picture of their data and the journey that a student has made from web visit all the way through to their enrollment. And then lastly, technology doesn't always support lead nurturing activities. There are many technologies that are being used to send broadcast emails and even nurture emails, but the technology is not always supportive of the kind of experience that schools want to provide those students or give access or visibility into the tracking of that. So let's look at the other next issue that is often a struggle. There's a lot of components to the technology solutions that are necessary in order to collect data throughout the whole student experience or the prospective student experience. So the website on the left-hand side, the website, the shopping cart, live chat, all provide a tremendous amount of data around visitors to the site and their experiences before they actually become an enrolled student. In the middle, we're looking at marketing automation technologies there that are connected usually to the web experience and then also connect on the back end to the student information system. And then the student information systems on the right are student information systems with some of them have significant CRM capability, customer relations management or client relations management, and some are more CRMs related to student services once someone becomes a student. So having technology available in each of these different areas, sometimes that's missing, and then in almost all cases, it hasn't been connected through the whole stream of experience that a prospective student has. And then the next scenario that we look at is technology ecosystems don't necessarily provide insight. And this is something that Kirsten and I are going to talk about. The technology provides information, sometimes useful information, and it provides access to a lot of data. But the insights, in our opinion, require looking at that information over a period of time, performing analysis, and actually having conversations. A lot of times there's people that are not in the room or not involved in a conversation that could provide insight. So here are some examples of some insights that you'd obviously want to know. How much should you spend with ad spend this year to accomplish whatever goals you have for enrollments? Which campaigns have the highest lead to conversion rate? And then cost of acquisition per student is one of those very important numbers that most schools and most marketers really want to know. So next, all of these are examples of what is missing from a technology or an access standpoint, but the goal is to provide insights. And so first of all is schools and marketers need to have the ability to collect data. That is baseline, that is the base of the pyramid, that if you're not collecting the data, you can't organize and use the data to make sense out of it. The next is organizing the data, and this is something that Kirsten spends hours and hours and hours on as we get data from different schools, because that data doesn't always map to data from a different system. The fields don't match, the data is incomplete, and so organizing that data so that it becomes useful at a later point would be the next step related to collection. And obviously you want to collect it in an organized fashion if possible. Third is access to that data. So accessing that data is occasionally or often in different parts of a university, and so that's a different group that manages that, and maybe the access to that data is only done on a periodic basis. Maybe it's in a registration system. It's a lagging access to that data, so it's old data. It's a month old, or it's a quarter or a semester old before you get access to the data. And then fourth is to connect the data. So that would be the next level in a hierarchy, is to be able to get that data connected all the way across the whole spectrum. And then lastly is visually representing that data. This is where we think most people in the world are very busy, and they have a very limited attention span in terms of how much time they're willing to spend sifting through and looking at something. And so learning to create and visually represent data so it provides meaning to people is really important. So that another way to describe this stage would be to show data in a meaningful way. And then beyond that is the ability to create insights out of that. And so we'll give some examples of how to do that, looking at some visually represented data in a few minutes. So next slide. So Dawn, we're going to have a poll here. So we're going to go to a poll question.
I'm about to launch it.
So if you could what best describes your current state of where your marketing and enrollment data comes from. And please pick the choice that best describes your situation. Okay. Okay. So what do we have, Dawn? So people have data. We have access to all our data. That's great. And some are cleaning, and a few are connecting, and a few are visually able to display. So this actually maps its inverted pyramid pretty well to the hierarchy we just described. So let's talk about enrollment intelligence for a minute. So we look at enrollment intelligence as the ability to connect to a variety of data sources. Most of these data sources provide their own reports. These applications all have a reporting capability of some kind. That reporting capability is sometimes quite robust, but if someone is responsible for looking at this whole picture, they end up often working in Excel spreadsheets and bringing, CSV files from each of these different applications into an Excel spreadsheet and then trying to do this all themselves. And so what we have done is created an enrollment intelligence tool that allows us to connect into these data sources and then visually represent meaningful data representation with the ability to drill down in any one of these actual sources. And why this is important, if you go to the next slide, please. Why this is important is because integrated data and sync systems allow you to see that entire life cycle in a much more timely fashion. And if that's automated, then you get less human error if it's automated and it's connected in a way that makes it integrated and meaningful from, say, web traffic to lead to enrollment. That analysis is more possible. It's more possible to do it on a weekly or even daily basis because it's accessible. And then lastly, you can involve more people who can understand that data. They don't have to be deep into a file or an Excel spreadsheet or an application to be able to understand it. You can get insights from people in leadership. You can get insights from people who are in a call center. You can get insights from people who are marketers. And this allows you to bring more people into that insight discussion. And the most important question, if you can go to the next slide, Dawn, the most important question that we encourage our team here at MindMAx to ask is why. I used to do a whole lot of process consulting and organizational development back in the 80s and 90s. And in my mind, this is one of the most important questions to ask, and to create a hypothesis and then to go test that hypothesis based on why. And so we're going to, Kirsten and I are going to have a dialogue about some data that we have represented in our enrollment intelligence platform that it allows us to look at that data and then ask the question why around things that are anomalies or things that might be of importance to us. So Kirsten, if you can pull up the dashboard and introduce what we are looking at.
So this is a leadership dashboard that we have created for a non-credit certificate program that we have been working with for years. The data sources that this dashboard utilizes are CRM, marketing automation, Google Analytics, Google AdWords, Facebook, LinkedIn, and call center data.
And so, Kirsten, how do you organize that data so that it comes into this dashboard? What kinds of things do you need to do that?
So as you mentioned previously, the first thing is we connect to all those different sources and pull them into one environment where I'm able to work with it. And then the next step is to do a lot of organizing and maintenance on the data sources to get it to a place where the data is like consistent and we can effectively report on it. And so that's the biggest challenge. And then once it's here, we can create it and put it into a dashboard and look at the metrics in many different ways.
So Kirsten and I have been working together for a while, and the top left-hand panel is an area where I'm most interested in as someone who doesn't work on the program specifically, but I'm interested in what kind of revenue we're able to generate. And so if you can click on this, we are now able to go deeper into looking at month-over-month revenues, year-over-year revenues, and this is definitely a cyclical. This program runs 3 times a year, so we have cyclicality in terms of when the revenue is generated, but we have a good trend and the program is growing. So that's great. That's something that I'm interested in, and I'd want to know, okay, well, why is the program growing? And so if I take a look at the next panel over, the lead to enroll, which is a common conversion number that people are interested in looking at, I see a significant anomaly here. So Kirsten, when I see the 17 to 18 lead to enroll was 13%, and in the following year it was almost 30%, that's more than double the conversion rate. So we want to ask the question why. So I'll say, Kirsten, what are some thoughts about why you think that has happened?
So to look at the why, we need to go take a look at enrollments and leads and kind of drill down to see what's going on. So if we go to leads first, we can take a look at how leads have dropped in the last year or two, and we're going to take a look at the different sources where the leads are coming from. And so as we can see from this chart, we have pulled back from Facebook. And so the leads coming from Facebook have gone down to none. And so that's one significant change.
So the lead number has decreased, and yet our enrollments have continued to grow. And to be fully transparent, because this is a looking backwards set of data, and obviously this happened in 17 and 18, this is an example of where we had a hypothesis. We spent a lot of money on Facebook ads. We generated a lot of leads, and then those leads get followed up with our call center. And so our call center team was calling all these Facebook leads. And the feedback from our call team was that these leads were useless and horrible and other various descriptors. And it also cost us a lot of money. So we decided, we had a hypothesis that maybe these were poor quality leads based on that qualitative feedback. And so we cut the Facebook spending. And if we can go to the enrollments panel now for a second. So in the enrollments panel, you can look at what 17's enrollments look like. You can look at what 18's enrollments look like, and you can look at what 19's enrollments. And I need to describe this because people wouldn't necessarily know why the overall sort of spiking is. This program is offered, as I mentioned, 3 times a year. So that explains why there are 3 peaks of enrollment, because this is a non-credit certificate, and people will enroll in the last minute, so to speak, according to the enrollment deadline. And we used to have only 3 peak enrollments, and this happened many years ago. This was about 6 or 7 years ago. And so we added a promotion in that other month, that month where the enrollments were the lowest, and we added a promotion, which, as you can see now, is a very successful promotion. And so what we have are 6 peak enrollment months, and then 6 months where it's sort of medium or lower enrollments. But let's take a look at our enrollment sources, and if you can click on one of these and take a look at this.
So we can take a look. Here's a drill down of the same month that we used for leads.
Yeah.
And you can see the primary source is a direct enroll.
Right.
And,
So,
and there is no enrollments from Facebook.
right, right. So let's go over to the lead source or the enrollment source in the pie chart there, because that's another thing to look at. And this is something that is a trend. We had a question before. Dawn, I know someone submitted a question. What was the question that was submitted before the webinar?
Oh, yeah, when analyzing a social media campaign, for example, Facebook ads, how can you determine success based on the data they provide?
So in this case, this was a combination of both qualitative measurement as well as looking at the actual results of how many Facebook leads actually became enrollments. It doesn't mean that in this case that Facebook was not a useful influencer, but it's not, we can't show a direct to enroll from a Facebook ad in any significant way. This pie chart is really important because this is a trend that's happening more and more. And this was another question we have, which is what are some of the trends that are happening in graduate programs as well as other programs. And we're seeing more and more adults choosing to go direct to apply or direct to enroll because they're not leaving lead information because their email boxes are too full. So in this case, one of the reasons why our enrollments continue to go up is because the direct to enroll was increasing and our call team was able to spend more time calling people who are higher quality leads. So if you can go back to our dashboard for a second. So that's the lead conversion. And then if we can go to the CPE, cost per enrollment, and this is another very significant anomaly, which made me really excited to see. So we were able to, based on getting rid of our Facebook campaigns and also changing the way we were retargeting or remarketing, encouraging people to do direct to enroll in this case, actually lowered our cost of acquisition quite significantly. And this is a very important number, especially as a program is growing and scaling. So if we can go to the insights for what we learned from our work with this non-credit program, if we can go back to the insights page, Dawn.
Sure. I have one more question that just popped up if you guys want to answer while you're in the dashboard. What is the average conversion time for adult/lifelong learners? For example, time from seeing ad or receiving email to time to register.
Okay, so we are able to look at this and we do analyze that. And so we have a lead to enrollment time. And here it is over the 3 years or the years that we've been doing this. And it would be no surprise with all those direct to enrolls that same day is has the biggest percentage of the time, but the time varies from same day all the way out to 6 months to a year. But 53% of those that have enrolled have done so in less than a month.
Great, great. And generally what we see is for a non-credit certificate, if it's being marketed and targeted to a population that is the right population, somewhere between 30 and 90 days is a reasonable amount of time to expect. And then for a graduate level program, it can be 3 months to 18 months, again, depending on the timing of the program, how that fits within their life schedule, and also how long the program is. Most master's programs are somewhere between a year and 3 years for an adult working student to complete, and they have to figure out their schedules, and so they need more time to consider before they would enroll. But a 3 months to 18 months would be a time to consider with the same kind of curve that Kirsten just showed there. So some insights from our first dashboard to recap. So lead conversion percentage was way up. Main reason why was we got higher quality traffic. Facebook traffic ended and then ended the poor quality leads. We have tested and confirmed that. Next is, the enrollments were up, but leads were down. The leads were down because we stopped the Facebook advertising, gave the call center team more time to focus on higher quality leads, and we also shifted some of our retargeting efforts for high quality visitors. And then the cost per enrollment was down. Again, we stopped that Facebook expense. We reviewed other lead sources, and we also increased the direct to enroll population through retargeting visitors to the site. So that's an example of some insights that we developed from that dashboard. So let's go to a graduate level program. And if we can switch over, Kirsten, to a graduate level program.
Mm-hmm. So this is a marketing dashboard that we use for a client that has master's and bachelor online programs we're currently offering. And again, on this dashboard, it is utilizing the same sources as we talked about for the first dashboard. We have CRM, marketing automation, Google Analytics, Google AdWords, Facebook, LinkedIn, call center, and an additional sort of alternate lead source, an online job search board.
So in looking at this, I mean, this makes me really excited to let people know this is quite unusual. This is a school that has a unique situation where they have great flexibility in their governance. So the school itself is able to launch new online degree programs relatively or very quickly. And they're able to both identify them with our help as well, but identify them and then go build them and launch them. So that is a key factor to why both the bachelor's and the master's programs have increased. Secondly, they focus on a niche, and they're not trying to do gen ed. So these are not gen ed programs. These are very niche-oriented programs of which they are highly qualified to provide those programs to the marketplace. So if we take a look at first the increase in the bachelor's enrollments, which is that green curve there. Why that bachelor's program increased? So that's a very significant increase in a year and a half. Taking some bachelor's programs, there's about 4 or 5 bachelor's programs that make this up. This is a super curve. Let's take a look at the table that makes this curve up to give us an idea of what's actually going on there. And so I apologize if this is hard to see on your screen. But one of the key pieces, and if you can use your mouse, Kirsten, percent of enrolled total, there's one program that does 63% of all those enrollments. So this was one of the earlier programs that was launched. It's also a program that was yielding a significant amount of return. And the other program, which is doing about 16% of the enrollments, is also a major contributor to that. And so one of the things that we did early on, and we are continuing to do, is we are funneling marketing resources in not in direct proportion, but definitely spending more and focusing more on those 2 significant programs because they have such a high enrollment. And if you'll notice, the lead to app rate for that largest program is only 28%. It's still a very good number, but the focus isn't necessarily to try and generate leads. The focus is to try and generate apps. So our goal is to try and to get as many applications as possible, and again, not to force people to try and become a lead. So the insight here is that we changed our allocation, which is a fixed budget, to focus on the programs that might have the highest return, as well as the school that we work with picked some very good programs based on market assessment around which programs would resonate. So let's go on back to the master's conversion. So if we can take a look down at a lead source, so that master's program has grown as well. But if we look at the lead source and the enrollment source, so in the lead source, you can see those bottom 2 colors, the yellow sort of goldenrod and the purple or the lilac. They make up about 67% or so of the total leads generated, and that's from paid social, Facebook, and paid search. If we go down to the enrolled source, that is approximately 15 or 16% of the enrolled source. So we have leads that are not necessarily generating as an enrolled source. Now, this is not meant to be a slight on paid search or a slight on paid Facebook, because we are fairly sure, and we cannot demonstrate this yet, but we're fairly sure that a lot of that work that was done in paid search and paid social contributed to the bottom two pie pieces of direct application and then direct to website, website as the source for the enrolled source. So even though they're not tracked as a paid social Facebook or a paid search, we believe those are obviously influencers, because increasing that traffic wasn't possible without doing paid search and paid social. And so our insight here is that the lead sources are not necessarily equal in value, and we did change some of our investment in one specific area. If you can take a look at that orange slice, which is an online job board, which is only 10% of our lead sources, but we were able to generate and actually measure, it generated 17% of the enrollments. So this was a very good lead source, one of which we then increased our spend on, because we found a lead source that was generating a lot of enrollments. And so the increase in the masters, very similar. If we can go back to that table, the increase in the masters, very similar to the bachelor's, in the sense that not all programs have an equal market value. So if you can go to the table now, Kirsten. So we had an allocation of basically a fixed marketing budget, and you can see that there's one program that's quite significant. It does 34% of the enrollments, and then the others are fairly even in terms of distribution. And so a strategy that we use and continue to use and measure is we provide a baseline level of, I'll call it marketing and marketing services and nurture services for all programs, but the ones that are performing better, we actually increase spend and increase attention. And this is something we are continually testing and continually confirming. Kirsten, what would you like to add here?
I guess the only thing I would add is that this table that we've done by program is something that we also often create and look at for clients by different lead sources and by campaigns to kind of drill down and get that same information to see which sources or campaigns are performing better than others, and to help influence the decision on where to spend the marketing money and efforts.
Great. And so I'd like to just stop for a second and answer any questions that people have at this point while we're still on the dashboard here. So one question that we got is, if we don't have any of these technologies, which application should we get first? As some people have mentioned, they have access to data, but they're not connected. So one technology or one application that I'm sure everybody has is some kind of student information system. So that would be something that you already have. And then another would be you have your web analytics, probably Google Analytics, but you have web analytics of some kind. So those are at either ends of the funnel. A second or the next application most likely would be a CRM of some kind. A lot of the technologies that are in the student information system, most of these technologies will say they do many different things, and the marketing says they're just amazing right out of the box. The fact of the matter is, most of these applications are good at one or two things that they're designed to do, and they also can be serviceable in some of these other areas. So for instance, in the student information system world, excuse me, a lot of those applications have some CRM capability. They probably don't have marketing automation capability. We use Salesforce, for instance, as a CRM in a lot of the work that we do, and then we add a marketing automation system on top of that, because in order to get that access to what's happening on the website and mapping that to people's lead behavior and then behavior and enrollment, the CRM, Salesforce does a really good job of connecting that up. And then another question we have is what technologies do you recommend for CRM and marketing automation system? So we don't make a specific recommendation on that. Knowing what you're wanting to do or wanting to try to do with these different systems is really important. Working with an IT team to make sure that you can connect it is also important. Encouraging people to have an appropriate level of stakeholders to make a decision about some of these. A lot of times they're made without marketing being involved, or they're made without student services being involved. And in many cases, knowing that ahead of time can help you map some of these applications to get a fuller picture that's more useful to more people. So let's go to the insights. And so on these insights from the master's and bachelor's program, there was an increase in bachelor's. Why? One is they picked really good programs based on a market need. So these were programs that based on a market need. I'm also going to add that also mapped to their brand and the brand that people recognized in relationship to these programs. And then what we did is change the allocation of the fixed budget to really focus heavily on the growing programs and to service the other programs, but not to invest all of the budget equally across the different programs. The master's conversion is high. Why? Lead sources are not always equal in value. And so we changed investment in higher quality lead sources, and that increased those conversions in the master's programs. And then lastly, master's programs being growing. Our insight there is, again, not all programs have equal market value, and we reallocated the marketing resources and mapped that to the market value. So it's time for another poll, Dawn?
Yep, I'm going to launch the second poll question.
So here are 5, common insights. There's not 1,000 insights. There's, some pretty standard insights that are important to schools related to marketing and recruitment. Please pick the one that you consider to be most valuable to you or would be most valuable to you.
Okay, I'm going to close the poll now.
Okay.
And share results.
So focusing on campaigns. Okay, so great. So the most important here is to focus on which campaigns are most effective. And one of the things that's a big takeaway for us around that is not to focus on campaigns effectiveness being mapped to number of leads, but to really go all the way through to number of enrollments. It's not just about leads. So, for instance, we follow agencies a lot of times who are busy pitching, or even Facebook will busy pitch, or LinkedIn or paid search will say, okay, this will get you a lot of leads. It's not necessarily just about leads. And then measuring that lead to enrollment conversion rate, is right on the back end of that. So that seems to be valuable to everyone here. And then that would then inform sort of the top part, which is allocating, where do you allocate your marketing dollars? So great. So that's very helpful. And now we'd like to really open this up to questions that people would have.
All right, we have a couple that have already trickled in, so I'll just throw one out there right now. We have a question about MELT. I'd like to learn what other schools' MELT rates are in the time span between confirmation and day 1 of classes.
So that's a super complicated set of factors. A lot of it has to do with the school's brand. A lot of it has to do with what kind of onboarding experience that you're able to provide. And so those are all different factors that lead into that. And then knowing that MELT rate, we don't have national data on that. but the factors that we see as being important is the experience that someone has from enrollment to when they actually start the course. So with online programs, a common mistake we see is someone enrolls, say, months ahead of time, and then the communication flow between the student and the school in that period of time between when they enrolled and when the class starts is minimal or not very personal. And so one of the things that we recommend is an increased amount of attention when someone becomes an enrolled student. Secondly is, and we do this with schools that don't have as strong a brand or online programs where they have a melt issue, is we'll continue to do nurturing and marketing with value-add information all the way through till the drop date, or drop or withdrawal date. So that's the other thing to do to try and address melt as well.
All right, I have another question here. What industry metrics do you have to compare for conversions for the different parts of the funnel?
So from an industry metric standpoint, again, obviously that varies. The goal is to get conversion rates to enrollments. And so the shorter the course, the smaller the price point, often the higher the conversion rates we get. So for a master's program that's a 2 or 3 year part-time program, conversion rates are going to be lower because it's a more complicated decision for an adult. Conversion rates we see with higher brand schools, we've had open rates that have been in the 90% rate for emails. We've had lead channels that have led to huge numbers, 50+% traffic to lead ratios. But as you saw on the two examples we gave there, conversion rates in the 10% from traffic to lead, that's fantastic. Conversion rates to enrollments for master's programs in the 2 to 3 or 4% from is a perfectly reasonable number. And getting to know your rates by program would help then create that forecasting model going forward.
Okay, I'm just going to pull one more question due to time. What are the first steps to getting our data connected to a platform like this?
So Lee, I can take that question. So the first steps are actually very easy. You provide us the login credentials for your different data sources, and we work to pull those all in, and then we work to organize that data, and we do that in a collaborative way, going back and forth with what values are in different fields and what data you have available and what we need to clean and recommendations for how to better use your data so that we can then get it to a place where it's accurate and effective to do the reporting and analysis that we do to create these dashboards. And I think one of the things that I would say about this, the exciting thing about being able to pull in all these different sources is that we are able to even drill down further than some of the things we did today. And like one of the exciting projects I'm working on right now for a client is taking a look at looking by program at how their first touch campaigns are coming in and taking a look, like, does a campaign that's specific to a program generate more leads, or does just a general brand campaign work? And so that's kind of exciting, being able to drill down and see how that part of the funnel is working and how effective the campaigns are. And that's something that we're able to do because we're able to pull all these data sources and connect them together to make those insights.
Great. So if we didn't have time to get to your question, we'll actually reach out to you individually. In the meantime, you can keep submitting questions till the end of the webinar. Now I'd like to turn it over to Lee to talk about potential next steps.
So some next steps, we talked a little bit about technology here, and that really does, that is the foundation or the building block to be able to really do these analytics and to make to get insights and develop insights. So the first step is to assess what you actually have, and then before getting more technology, is to map a business process that works with the technology that you have, or identifies gaps in technology that you're missing, and has a business process to compensate for that right now. But once the technology comes into place, then a business process for how that technology is going to enable you to develop a clear insight or a clear view into your data. And then usually a phased plan to bring on technologies of some kind to enable you to achieve the business process you're trying to achieve, and then the process of implementation. And then what we encourage you to do is to always optimize and calibrate. We are constantly looking at the data that we have. Kirsten and I will look at those panels. Those panels came out of months of conversation back and forth of saying, well, what about this? Can we see this? Why? Where is this? And how does this affect this? And that has led to either more panels or different panels or less panels that allow us to have a better visualization of the information and the data that's being provided. So this is what we would suggest from a next step standpoint. And then lastly, that Kirsten and I are available. If you would like to have a short phone call, we would be glad to have a conversation about what steps you're currently taking. If you can click to the next slide, what steps you're currently taking, feel free to email us at ei@mindmax.net or give me a call directly. The phone number is there. And our goal is in those sessions is to really hear what you're trying to accomplish, what you have, and then give you some ideas of some next steps that might be right for you.
Great. Thank you, Lee and Kirsten. So if you'd like to reach out directly to our presenters from today's webinar, here is their direct contact information on the screen. This webinar is being recorded, so all attendees and registrants will be receiving a copy of the recording tomorrow. On behalf of MindMAX and UPSEA, I'd like to thank you for joining our webinar today. We'd appreciate it if you could take the quick survey at the close of this webinar so we can continue providing relevant and useful content to our viewers. We hope to see you at our next event. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks all.